an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Unspoiled, the book club, covering Crazy Rich Asians by Kevin Kwan. In this episode, Candace and I discuss whether or not we would want to be crazy rich when we have to deal with the kind of bullshit that these crazy rich Asians have to deal with. And also, maybe Kevin Kwan needs some help writing women. But you know what? What male writer could we not say that about almost? So, welcome to Unspoiled. Welcome to the show, everybody. I am Natasha.
I'm Candace.
And so this episode, I said almost after I said what man doesn't need help writing women characters, because I'm actually covering a book right now for Spoil Me, in which you would swear it was written by a woman, because this guy is nailing women characters hard, and I don't mean that sexually. And I highly recommend everybody read The Grace of Kings, by Ken Liu. So... Anyway,
I've heard good things about the Dandelion Dynasty.
It's super good. Lots of awesome women. But yeah, this, I actually managed to watch the movie for this book yesterday, which I always say that I want to watch the movie for book club episodes and never manage it. And there were some things that they changed that were worse. And then there was one thing that they changed that I liked a lot better. So I'm going to be interested in talking about that as well. But so Candace, why'd you volunteer for this book?
Because I'd already read it. Because I already read it. That's why.
She's a real underachiever, everybody.
I read it because my friend read it and she said it was super fun. So I listened to the audiobook and I thought it was good. But then I listened to it again and I was like, oh... There's some stuff going on here that I don't think I care for very much.
Yeah, I also listened to the audiobook, which I thought was really well done. I enjoyed it a lot.
Yes.
I get it's and this is no fault of the narrator, but she has to jump around from a Chinese accent to speaking Chinese, to an English accent, to an Australian accent, to an American accent, to back to speaking Chinese, and sometimes it gets a little messy.
Whatever they paid her, it was not enough.
Yeah, this bitch had a lot to do, and I really fell for her. Because there were some times where she would move back into an Australian accent, and you could just kind of hear the Chinese accent weirdly coming through on it. And she was fucking doing her best and doing way better than I would have done.
This book was incredibly busy in that department.
Mm-hmm.
It was like looking at one of those dresses that has all of this stuff going on it. And it's like, whoa, you need to delete a few of that.
A few of that.
Listen, it's been a morning, okay? That's the best I could do.
So the book centers around, there's the main story, and then there are a couple of side characters. So the main story is, between Rachel and Nick. Rachel is an American woman, who was apparently born in China, but was brought to the United States by her mother when she was a baby. She thinks that her father is dead. We find out, spoiler alert, that he is not. And, she was raised by a mother who worked really hard and is doing pretty well now by an American standard of a single mom immigrant coming to the United States. And she starts dating this dude that she met at school. She, and I say that like she's a student. She is a professor. And he is also. And she gets hooked up with him on a blind date and unexpectedly finds herself really liking him and does not realize that his family is fucking loaded. The kind of loaded that leads to him being spied on by people in the city who pass on information about his doings to family back home.
It's one of the ladies, I think it's Astrid's cousin or sister-in-law. This is so messy. The Australian girl.
Oh, right. Yeah,
She
I think
says,
that is sister-in-law.
Yeah, it's not just the fact that they're the kind of wealthy that they don't talk about it. It's the kind of wealth that is just utterly unimaginable, but they're also extremely private.
Yeah. Like,
there's a scene where her friend is taking her to a party. They're not on the GPS.
Yeah.
Which I found to be odd, but I'm not familiar with this level of wealth, so maybe that's normal. I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting because that was one big change that I noted from the book to the movie, is that when she's visiting her friend, she says Nick's name, Nick Young. And in the book, that doesn't ring bells for people because he's not that, out there. But when she mentions the name of his friend whose wedding it's going to be, everybody knows his name, Colin Koo. In the movie, she says Nick Young, and everybody immediately knows. So they set it up a little bit differently in the movie, that he's a bit more public a figure than he is in the books. But I think that's just shorthand,
I agree, but I will also say that was one of my biggest beefs with this book, is how do you date a guy for so long and not ask these questions? Like, they've been together, I forgot how long they've been together, but it's been like a year at least. Mm-hmm. How do you date a guy for an entire year and then agree to go meet his family, and you fly there in some unimaginable class of, obviously ultra rich, and you don't ask his family? And that's when she starts realizing, oh, well, his shirts are this brand that I can't remember. And it's just girl, you live in New York. You know how expensive his flat would be. Why are you not asking these questions way in advance? I don't know. It just felt like one of those tropes in books where someone is just stupid for the plot and there's no other reason for it.
Well, she describes his apartment as being really modest and not decked out in particular.
But that's not what I mean, though. The flat itself.
Stop calling it a flat. It's in America. It's in New York. Stop it. It's like being well, they were playing football when they were playing soccer. You're American. Knock it off.
Is that not what it is? What should I call it then?
An apartment.
But an apartment, I don't know, whatever. Who cares? I'm going to call it a flat. Get over it. The space he rents in a building. I'm
drinking my tea, everybody.
It's very expensive, and she should know that.
I mean, I'm sure, because he says, that they're doing okay. So she probably thinks that, yeah, it probably is expensive, but I don't think that he's renting something that's on par with what it turns out he can actually afford.
I don't know. I just know that if I had gotten on that plane and flew the way that they did, I would have had 10 questions immediately.
Well, she does because he tries at first to say that it's his frequent flyer miles that he cashed in.
That's another thing. Why is he lying? He knows his family is crazy, and he's throwing this girl in the middle of it. I really didn't like Nick throughout half this book, at least.
Agreed. Yeah, that was my main problem, was that by the time they're getting on the plane, I thought him doing this ridiculous primo first class was going to be his coming out. That this was what he was going to use to be okay, listen, I have something I have to tell you. And that's what they do in the movie. But in the book, she buys his weirdo story about it being flyer miles, which anybody who has ever had frequent flyer miles knows that this isn't really how this works anyway.
Listen, my aunt has been a flight attendant for Delta for most of my life. That is not how any of this works.
So, and then, she doesn't persist in asking questions. And he continues to lie, even though he knows that it's a matter of 10 hours before they land somewhere where all of the shit he's trying to act is going to be secret forever is going to be revealed, and she's going to feel totally betrayed. And Astrid, who is his cousin, who is one of the other main side characters, she warns Nick that he needs to sit down and talk to her about what she's walking into and prepare her, because it's such a serious difference from, like, the way that they live when they're in Singapore is just a whole other world. And he acts like he's listening to Astrid and then totally does not do that at all.
I think part of Nick's problem is that he has such disdain for all of it. Like, all of the drama. Like, he just... It's like in his head he puts his mother on, like, an other planet shelf. Where he's just like... He's just completely dismissive of all of this. And he can get away with it because he's the golden child.
Right.
And he doesn't ever really consider how that might affect literally anyone else, including Rachel, that he allegedly cares about.
Yeah, I think it's a combo of, like, he doesn't consider how it's going to affect anyone else, and he has been so sheltered from, like, the actual attitudes of people that he really thinks that it's not going to matter to anybody. In this, like, incredibly, inexcusably naive way. That it just, dude, how old are you? And you've been in this world and you don't get to act like this is a complete surprise at this point in your life.
I don't even think that it's naivety. I think that he is willfully obtuse and ignorant. I don't even think he's ignorant. I want to call it obtuse, because obtuse implies real frustration. He just dismisses all of it. He doesn't think it's important, and he literally doesn't think about it, and yet he's still benefiting massively from it. Because I'm sorry, but whatever his salary is as a professor at New York University, it's not going to pay for any of this stuff. Like, he's just allowed to just jet set and do whatever the fuck he wants.
Right.
And he just does not take into account anybody else's feelings ever, even his mother's. He doesn't even care about his mother's feelings. And the whole
beginning of this book, and again, I'm going to compare it to the movie. I like doing this occasionally just because I find it interesting when a movie decides to sidestep something. In the movie, his mother, as soon as she hears the news about this, immediately calls him and asks, "Are you bringing the girl that you're seeing to New York?"
Yeah, that didn't happen in the book.
No. In the book, she hears from somebody else. She refuses to accept that he's dating anybody seriously in the beginning. Then when she finds out that he is dating someone seriously, she's so angry with him for not talking to her about it that she pretends to not know. And just, like, plays this whole, like, passive-aggressive game with him. And then decides that she's going to make sure that she's not even at home when they arrive, so that he can't force her into welcoming this woman that she doesn't know, that he has barely told her about, into her home. And, like, honestly, Nick, I'm not really, like, your mom is being a huge snob. But also, I'm not really that mad at her, because as it turns out, you were not upfront with, like, anybody about anything. And I want to point out that one of the writers of the screenplay was a woman, so I think maybe there was maybe an added level of insight here, because I think that the author of the book, Kevin Kwan, look, I get it. A lot of these women are probably hella vapid and intolerable, but the way he writes them is the way he writes Nicholas and Colin and that other guy, I can't remember his name. It's very different. Bernard. No, please don't. Let's not pretend like I'm talking about Bernard. But you know what I mean? Like, this is really, in my opinion, the most flagrant of this was during the Bachelor and the Bachelorette stuff. Colin and his friends are portrayed as completely reasonable, and we don't really want to be doing any of this crazy stuff, and they just literally run away. Right. And all of the women are portrayed as, like, this, like, big bag of, like, cats and birds all together in one place, and it's just completely insane. Bag of cats and birds. What a weird way to describe it. All right.
It works, I can get behind that, because it's crazy. No, it does. But I just feel like Eleanor in particular, he wrote her in a way that I thought was terrible, but it was really over the top.
Yeah.
And I understand she must have been, like, this is how he's writing a woman being hurt by her child.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's already living across the earth doing work that she doesn't appreciate or care about. He doesn't include her in anything. He hasn't been home to Singapore in forever. Since he's dating Rachel at least, so that's at least a year or two.
Right.
I really wish I knew how long they'd been together. I forgot.
I think they were together for a year, and he was supposed to come home at the end of the last year, and he didn't. Yeah. So he's been away for like 2 years, I think.
So he's completely blowing off his family. He's blowing off his mother. He's literally the golden child, and he's just... This is inexcusable behavior. And I don't like the way that Nick was written, and I don't care for the way that his mother was portrayed as crazy when she was really just hurt. Like, if you can't tell the difference, then maybe you shouldn't write women.
And I also have to say that, like, I'm not familiar enough with this kind of world and the dynamic that they're in to know what it would be like at, say, the bachelorette party. There's like one woman that turns out to be Sophie is her name. Who turns out to be sort of reasonable and winds up talking to Rachel off to the side after shit starts to go left.
I hated all of this. She's the not like other girls girl.
Well, it's a combo of like not like other girls girl, and also I think it's supposed to be that she's like more on Rachel's level because she's
a professional.
Mike's sister. Is that his name? Astrid's husband?
Michael, yeah.
Yeah. So they...
Well, no, I guess she's Colin's sister, isn't it?
Is she Colin's sister?
I think she's Colin's sister.
Okay, gotcha.
But Colin is related to Astrid and Nick, so it's really weird.
I get so confused about this. They try and like break it down a few different times in the book, and I just can't keep track of it. I
just didn't care about it.
But yeah, I feel like the noted difference between the two situations, and this is why I like kind of let it slide in terms of the portrayal of a bachelor party versus the bachelorette party, is that what she has set up for the bachelorette party is so much more benign. We're going to shop, we're going to dance, we're going to go to a spa day, we're going to hang out on the beach. Versus what Bernard sets up for the bachelor party, which is we're going to go to a dog fight, we're going to eat ice cream sundaes off of naked women that I've hired. We're going to, just basically do a bunch of like really shady, underhanded shit that makes a lot of people uncomfortable. Shit. Yeah. And so they make it so that by bailing, Colin and Nick are proving themselves to be good dudes, while there's no reasonable way for Rachel to get out of what she's doing without seeming like an alien. Because you don't like shopping? You don't like going to the spa? What do you mean? It
just shows such a just a ridiculous understanding of women's interpersonal relationships in general. Mm. I mean, this kind of ignorance is just like, why are you writing this if you don't... I mean, I get it that maybe he sees his world like that. I don't know anything about Kevin Kwan. But maybe he sees women that way, but come on, man.
Well, the thing is, like, for me, I don't find it, and in this particular situation, I'll restate, I don't find it totally unreasonable to think that a group of women who grew up together who all have money would react this way to somebody that they don't know suddenly being in their midst about to, like, take away the most eligible bachelor in their circle that they were all low-key hoping to grab.
I don't think it's that. I think for me it's that he just has like two kinds of women. He's got these, or three, I guess. Like when you get old, you turn into like a gossipy harpy, or you're a young gold digger, or you're a pick-me girl like Rachel and Sophie.
Okay.
Sophie went to university. She's a doctor. So, I just don't really like these types of portrayals of women, and it's really bothersome and pervasive throughout the entire book.
Yeah, he definitely does have them divided into camps. And even, what is the name of the girl that's getting married to Colin?
Araminta.
Araminta, right.
I was so disappointed with her character because I liked her.
Exactly. She starts off as somebody that you're kind of like low-key and like, okay, cool. She seems... And then she, in the end, is written as being as superficial and uncaring as anybody else in her reaction to Astrid. And I just didn't understand that decision. It felt like it came way out of left field. But, okay, so bachelorette party is really the first time that Rachel realizes, like, what she's going to have to be coping with. At the time of the bachelorette party in the book, I believe she still hasn't met Nick's mother yet.
No, because if I recall correctly, the mother was not at that party.
No. And she made sure to be gone for a couple of days. So by the time that Rachel
she's definitely still in Shanghai or Hong Kong or wherever they are.
Yeah, she goes away for a spa weekend with her ladies. And
did you say spa or did you mean spy? Because that's what she's doing.
Yeah, she hires a private investigator and basically just chills and gets facials until they come back to her with some information.
I want to say really quick that I super duper hated the haggling scene with the PI guy. Because these because they have billions of dollars and they're haggling with this guy over like 10,000. Like, just fucking
I really
pay
like
him.
that.
You super wanted this information and you're not willing to pay for it.
Not only that haggling scene, but I loved the scene where they go to that like black market purse shop where they're selling all of the like off-brand. And it turns out like they're made by the same factories and they're made from the same materials as the brand names, but they are overflow that factories purposely commission and then keep to themselves so that they can sell it at a reduced rate. They are all women who know that everyone else knows that they can afford the real thing. So they'll save a few pennies by buying a fake because they are that cheap, even though they have money to burn. They could literally burn money and not feel it at all.
This is so, as much as I hated those scenes, 100% rich people are like this.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
My family was new money for a while. And I cannot even begin to describe the level of both extravagance and cheapskateness. And it's such a weird dynamic to watch someone who has like 3 Mercedes cars that are not even 6 months old in their garage bitching about the cost of a handbag.
Yep.
You know, it's just like, God, are you rich people are so fucking wild, man.
I mean, those are the people like that we would always have problems with in retail. You know, whether I was like working at a hotel or at a restaurant or in a shop, it was always the people who had money that were the least generous, that were the most mean about spending anything on anything. And I've always heard that like saying like, well, how do you think they got rich? They're careful with their money. Bullshit. No. They're rich because they're careful with, get out of here with that. They inherited that money and they're also entitled. And in being entitled and being super cheap about everything will often go together.
My niece, when she turned 15, she wanted to get a job. And she mentioned a restaurant that she wanted to work with in a suburb that's south of where I am. And this was a nicer area. And she said, I want to work at that location because the people who live there have more money and will leave a better tip. And the minute that those words were out of her mouth, I could not stop a literal guffaw from clawing its way from my throat because she really thought.
People do think. And I mean, I have run across the occasional exception, of course. There was a dude who like tipped me $100 that pulled in a Bentley when I was working at this hotel.
Oh, sure.
But mostly the rich people wouldn't tip at all. Like, or they'd give you know, I had somebody actually give me 50 cents. And I was just like, and it was one of those things where they were older and they were clearly using the fact that they were old to pretend that they didn't know any better. Like, get out of here.
Yeah, you know, that was one thing that my dad really nailed home for us when we were younger. You should not go to a place that requires a tip if you can't afford to leave a proper tip.
Right, agreed.
He was such a good tipper, and I think it's because he worked in food service for so long. But
I think that should be a requirement for every human being on the face of planet Earth.
I mean,
is to have to work in service.
In my opinion, like, tip culture should be illegal. But I mean, but yeah, some of you people have never worked in retail or food service, and it shows. Mm-hmm. That meme is super applicable. Tip well or eat at McDonald's.
Yep, agreed. So yeah, she finds out about everything in this terribly like roundabout way.
I feel
and
so
there's
bad
finally
for her.
like a confrontation between her and Nick where she's like, I can't believe that you didn't tell me any of this. It takes a long time to get there and for her to really express to him how betrayed and angry she feels. And again, Nick is blindsided. Whoa, I had no idea. What? Again, I just can't with you, Nick. Like, there's simply no way that you hang around the dudes that you do who talk about people the way that they do, and you don't know this is going to apply to Rachel as well. You know, there's an interesting scene in the movie where they sort of set that up, where Eddie is like hanging out with Nick and Colin and Bernard, and he asks straight up to Nick, like, what does she even bring to the table? And he is much more confrontational about it than anybody in the book is, in order to make it clear to us that Nick is pretty aware. And in the book, it's like nobody apparently ever says anything to him to his face. All these other girls around Rachel are more than willing to be like, well, you're obviously a gold digging cunt. And we know that you're going to need, you know, you're going to have to pull this off as quickly as you can before he comes to his senses. But for some reason, the supposedly equally judgmental and rich and obsessed with status men that Nick hangs out with never ever ask Nick about choosing Rachel. Like, it wasn't like they act as if it's a non-issue, even though, you know, if they chose her, their families would flip out. They are all well aware that their families would flip out. And yet for some reason, nobody asks him about it. I don't buy it. You know, the scene with Eddie in the movie feels like something that should have been included in the book, where somebody like goes to Nick, like, what the fuck, dude?
Those changes had to be made or the movie would not work. Because in my opinion, they don't work in the book either.
Right. Agreed.
Nick is straight up unlikable in the book.
Right.
I was infuriated with him for most of the story. And I also don't, I know I said I didn't care for this portrayal of women with the, you know, the whole bachelorette party and this whole scene of like really super wealthy girls who are, you know, looking for, you know, a rich husband or whatever, but, you know, this is what they're socialized to be anyway. Mm-hmm. So, you know, if you want to be mad at someone, if you want to be bitter about how the women in your, you know, social circles are, maybe you should look at why that's the case.
I did kind of like, because I felt like he tried to do that in one scene. It's really interesting, too. He sets it up that this scene happens right after they... What are you doing over there?
Sorry. I'll stop.
There's a scene right after everybody, like after Rachel says, I thought he was a real catch, and realizes like she's made a mistake. And later on, that same evening down the table, she overhears a girl and she's saying that she really loves this guy. And they present to her... This was a great
conversation. This was really good, and I was going to bring it up too.
Yeah, it's a play-by-play of, well, you're going to need personal training. You're going to have to get your hair and your nails done, spa appointments. You're going to have at least like 2 cars for this and that. You're going to want to visit such and so like yearly. And basically they're doing a tally on everything that as a rich housewife, she's going to have to be required to do and have in order to maintain respectability.
Not just that, but they bring up the children. You know, school is going to cost this much. Chauffeur is going to cost this much. How you can't clothe your babies and still function in this world on, you know, an $800,000 salary. And I just, as frustrating as these women are, they're not wrong.
Well, and that's like the accoutrements that come with this life are like these, you know, the fact that they're calling Rachel a gold digger, but this girl, they're telling her, you are going to need more than this. And you can't, like, I don't care if you love this guy. That doesn't matter. You need to pick somebody who's going to be able to provide all of this for you. I thought was a combo of, like, trying to point out the hypocrisy that's inherent in this, but also, if you are of a certain class, you are expected to be able to sustain a certain lifestyle without any, you know, without any problems or, you know, showing any weakness.
I think the huge difference between Rachel and that girl is that Rachel is an outsider. Mm-hmm. Not only is she not from this area, no, she doesn't know any of these people, mm-hmm. she's American. Mm-hmm. She was born in mainland China, which apparently is somehow also really shameful. I don't understand this culture, so I don't really feel like I'm qualified to comment on that, but apparently being born in mainland China is bad.
Yeah.
But I wanted to point out here that this is not when those women were talking about the breakdown. They mentioned there would be a difference in pay scale if their employees were Sri Lankan versus white Europeans.
Oh, right. I forgot about this.
This is super gross. And I know that a lot of people don't want to talk about it because it's, you know, the product of colonization and stuff. But this is really fucking gross colorism. A lot of people brought it up in reviews of the movie. But this is racist and it's gross and I hate it. And the whole thing about at the party with Nick's family and how Nick tries to, oh so sweetly, explain away the function of his nanny. I forget the name. I don't want to call it anything, so I'll mess it up. But she's essentially a slave.
Yeah.
She's unpaid. She doesn't have a name. She's just... This is so disgusting to me.
Yeah, a lot of you probably saw that article that came out a couple of years ago.
Yeah, in the Atlantic.
Yeah, and I don't remember what country he was from. Was he from Thailand?
That was from the Philippines.
Philippines, okay.
But it is the same concept.
Yeah, it's basically somebody that you take in to your house, do not pay a wage, and...
Maids.
What's that?
I'm using my air quotes. They're maids. That's what they are.
Right. And this woman, like, he grew up thinking that she was, basically, he as a child didn't understand her function in the family and would see that she was like literally sleeping on like a pile of rags in the hallway and would say something to his mother about like, why doesn't she have a bed, in the innocent way that children have, pointing out very obvious fucking things. And his mother would assure him that she doesn't want a bed. She, like, you know, the kind of shit where we're just going to pretend that she's barely even a person and doesn't want the things that people want.
The woman in that article didn't even have a fucking name. He never said her name. He called her his Lola the entire time because I think that's the word that they used to describe. And the number of, you know, Filipino people and that came, you know, to defend this was... Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this guy eventually grew up and started to realize that this was not okay. But he was still trying to make excuses for it because culturally, it's not something rare. It's just that once he got to the United States, once his family brought her with them, he started to realize from the way that people behaved about it that there was something wrong, and then started to put the pieces of logic together to realize, like, she's a slave. And she was so ill-equipped to go out and into the world and function within a regular system of employment that she never left. And he tried to, like, give her her own place eventually as an adult, and she doesn't know how to live that way, and so wanted to remain serving, essentially, because that is what she is comfortable doing, because that is how she was socialized from a very young age to believe her worth is connected to.
A gift, I think. Somewhere in that article they talked about how she was just given to them. She was just a gift. And and when I read that in this book, I was just like, oh God, really? Like, this is
Yeah.
so tone deaf. Like, I understand that it happens, but you need to address this better. Like, as an author, like, you can't just put this in here like this and not even address it.
That was on my mind a lot as I read this, was him, like, waiting for him to acknowledge the way that the servants are treated and how many of them are not paid and how many of them this is a life sentence for. And it just never comes up. And
No.
I'm not really, like, sure what place it would have had in the overall narrative of everything, because what I feel like Ken's connection is that he's writing this from the perspective of somebody who lived in this world. Like, this is, a lot of this is based on his own childhood.
Yeah,
and
he
I don't
comes
think
from
he
the
wants
money.
to examine that because he would be implicated.
It's completely
also.
obvious, and I think that the way to address it would have been through Rachel's reaction, because she is American. She doesn't remember China at all. She wasn't raised in this way. Her mom, worked in food service for ages, and then, became a real estate agent. That would have been the best way to address it if she would have brought that up with Nick later. But on the other hand, Rachel hardly ever brings things up with Nick, so it would have been out of character.
There's that. Yeah.
I just feel like so much about this book, as entertaining as it was, it just really seems unaware of itself.
Unaware of itself, I feel like, is a good way to say that.
And
Because I
that's
did
really
like
frustrating.
enjoy the story in a lot of ways. Because this is a peek into a world that I can't even conceive of. And into a societal structure that feels so antiquated to me. It's almost as if we're stepping back in time into a lords and ladies situation that it's hard for me to imagine still functioning within those parameters and having the same expectations of women that we had 100 years ago, which is 100% the expectation. Like Colin's sister, in continuing to go on to be a pediatric surgeon rather than quitting school and marrying right away, she's a huge exception to the rule. You go to school and you get enough schooling to become a doctor, but then you don't become a doctor. You get married, and that's the end.
I think that one of the other things that I had an issue with, and again, this was mostly done with Nick and Sophie, is they kind of exist outside of everything you just said. Like, they're kind of like appendage. I don't know what word I'm looking for, but it's like extraneous. They live on the outside of this. But they still benefit quite a bit from it. And they still have the nerve to, like, have disdain for it. Like, Nick would not be able to dress the way he dresses if he didn't, have all of this money. Because I think at some point Rachel realizes, well, these brand names are pretty, exclusive or whatever. And his apartment is super expensive. And, Sophie says she flew, like, economy class or whatever. But I'm just like, yeah, but how do you live, though?
Right.
Like, they benefit from it and they want to separate themselves from it. But
not entirely.
That's just, I just think that's also very common among, rich kids. They grow up and they're just like, oh, I don't want to do this. But then they still go to an Ivy League, no student loans.
Yeah, it's interesting where we draw that line where we still want our privilege, don't get me wrong, but we want to act like we don't.
Like, I can't believe, I see this on Reddit a lot. Young people posting about their relationships with their parents. I'm in college and my parents still try to, boss me around and make me do this and that. And, well, then you should just, get a different apartment and move out. Oh, well, I can't afford that, really. Okay, well, then shut the fuck up about it and deal with it. Suck it up for 6 years or however long you're going to be in school and then deal with it. Like, would I let my parents record my living room if they were paying for my rent, my tuition, and my utilities? Yeah.
They want to record their living room?
This one girl had, like, her parents were crazy, and they had, like, a camera in her living room and stuff. And I'm just like, can you, like, not hang out elsewhere? Like, if they're paying
That
for
is
all of this,
super weird.
That's like really
No.
extreme.
Mm-mm.
That's a super extreme example. But if my parents were wealthy and it was either get cut off or deal with this like camera issue that could be easily solved with a loop tape and stuff, but this was
Candace, you can't justify this. That's nuts.
I would. I've been super poor. If my parents wanted to do that for me until, I was done with school, then...
The thing is, like, as soon as a parent is free enough to tell me that they want to do something that insane, I am assuming they are already doing way more insane shit that they are not telling me about.
I guess. That's fair. I just get really annoyed with these kids who complain about stuff and then don't realize their privilege. It's just personally annoying to me because my cousins are the same way.
Ah, okay. So you have like a personal...
I have a personal grudge.
Gotcha.
Oh no, I can't do this and that. Shut up. You just got a brand new SUV. Fuck off.
So, all right, speaking of this, let's talk about the fucking wedding, because that's some shit.
In the movie, it was fantastic.
Oh my, there's water. Why does she want to walk down an aisle flooded with water?
Why are you asking this question? You know why? Because it's expensive and extra AF.
But it's ruining her shoes, ruining her dress, ruining the dresses and shoes of her
She probably
bridesmaids.
had like 5 others made just like it.
I guess. Just like, it doesn't, like, I don't feel like it's impressive looking either.
I thought it was amazing.
I didn't like it. It just looked like a mess. Somebody spilled something. Quick.
You're being really grouchy about it, but it was fantastic.
I don't get it.
She's never going to wear that dress again.
I mean, that's true of every bride. But we're not doing that.
Okay. I'm not really sure Araminta fits into the category of every bride. But
oh my God. Araminta's gold jumpsuit at the bachelorette party, though. Oh, that was my favorite outfit of the entire movie.
I'm going to be honest. I mostly watch the movies for the costumes.
That dress or jumpsuit, like, it's so good. But yeah, so this wedding, it turns out, cost like $40 million. And, in the books, it's really interesting how differently everybody reacts to it, but mostly the old money crew is not impressed and thinks that it's really tacky. That the food that they're serving is like that molecular gastronomy type shit where you have to pop a bubble to get to your soup, or things are served in little beads of flavor punches. Yeah. And just generally, everybody who I think has some taste believes that it's like way too over the top. And I really would agree. I don't get me wrong. I am super extra. But when you're doing something like this, where it's a wedding specifically, if you're throwing a party and you're only inviting people that are within your own age group and of similar interests as you and whatnot, that's one thing. But when you're throwing a wedding, you need to consider all of the old heads that are going to be there.
Araminta said fuck you to that.
She just doesn't care. And everybody is just kind of like, okay. Candace is trying not to laugh after she just took a sip of water. But that popping of the bubble to make it like drop into the soup, I just don't really want to be eating something that could be a bubble at all. I just don't like that whole idea. I don't know. So yeah, I kind of side, like there's this huge teapot made of flowers that's pouring like a stream of flowers into a giant teacup. And right now at the Dallas Arboretum, there's this huge like 20-foot tall Easter basket filled with flowers that you can have your photo taken in front of. And that's what it reminded me of, was that kind of thing that's like really goofy and like it's for like a photo op with kids. And you shouldn't be doing that at your wedding. You do that if you own like a fucking orchard and you're having people come and pick apples on the weekends and you want to appeal to like the family element. It just is so... And all of the waiters and waitresses are dressed up in, like, Louis the 16th style jackets and wigs and whatnot.
If white people can have their weird-ass weddings with weird costume stuff on plantations, then Araminta can have
what are you talking about?
Ass wedding if she wants to. I think that you're really offended by this wedding, and I can't really understand why, other than the fact
because it sounds hideous.
Okay, but it's not your wedding.
I don't understand how Candace, the most opinionated, I am going to say how I feel about this thing that has nothing to do with me person I have ever met, can say that it's not my wedding, so I shouldn't talk about how I do not like it.
Here's the thing. I personally think weddings are stupid and a big waste of money, and I think wedding culture is weird and shitty, and I just don't care. But I just think that weird people... rich people are fucking weird, and this bitch has a weird-ass wedding, and I think that you're planning your own wedding, and this is very triggering to you, and it shows.
I'm not planning my wedding right now. I'm not doing anything of the sort. I wish I was, but I have no money, and therefore planning it depresses me, so I have stopped.
I'm also still really angry that all those people tagged you in that really cute, like, veil thing with the balloons and everything, and I only get tagged in weird Facebook posts about bitches drinking wine out of Pringles cans in Walmart. I'm never going to let that go.
What was the one that I tagged you in recently?
It was,
I don't remember.
Yeah, it was a snake with a flower crown on it. And it was like when you're a venomous bitch, but you still have a nice aesthetic or something.
But you still want to look cute. That there's a lot of things though that I feel like people misunderstand about me, because people will tag me and stuff and be like, "This made me think of you," and I was like, "Did it?" So, what are you gonna do?
This is so far off brand that I might just block you.
I thought you understood me, and now nothing makes sense anymore. But yeah, for me, really what it is that none of this is cohesive. Like, if you have a theme, then I will, like, okay, I won't necessarily like the choices you make, but it'll feel like there's, like, a continuity and logic to it. But this is just all over the place.
So you don't think that the water in the aisles where everybody is wrecking their clothes and their shoes is not cohesive with this weird, like, micro gastro bubble bullshit? You don't think that that's...
They don't do the micro gastro bubble bullshit in the movie. And they don't do the flooding of the aisle in the book.
I'm so confused now. Look what you've done.
So, yeah, no, in short.
Anyway.
In the book, they have a bunch of birch trees hanging from the ceiling in the church.
I'll be honest, like, most of the descriptions in this book, I completely, like, tuned out because I don't care about this giant, like, yacht or whatever. I don't care.
Oh, all of the different rooms that are on Bernard's yacht.
Just the descriptions of stuff that he puts in this book was so extra to me. And I don't care about it. It's like George R.R. Martin and his boiled leather. And J.K. Rowling and her long tables of food and whatever. I don't care about this stuff.
Did you not care about the food descriptions? Because I will tell you straight up that...
No, because they're gross. I don't want pumpkin juice. The fuck?
No. I'm talking about in this book, you weirdo.
No, I don't care about that either.
You didn't care about the food in this book? Everything that she talked about that was put in front of her, I was like, oh my God. Like, it all sounded so good.
I just don't care about that kind of stuff in books.
There's one point where after she's, like, broken up with Nick and she's finally eating for the first time at her friend's house, that her mother piles, like, pork and ginger and pickled something and all this stuff on and wraps it up. And I was like, oh my God, it just sounded so good. I was, like, ready to die.
I didn't care.
Yeah, I'm
about...
completely not on the same page as you on that.
Especially
because it's Asian food, and that's not something I'm super familiar with. So I was really interested to hear about some of the like street food and like, you know, traditional at certain times foods.
I loved the street cart scene in the book. Mm-hmm. When they get off the plane, I loved that because I felt like that was really good, and that's who I thought Araminta was. Who she, you know, that girl in that scene. It was also very good in the movie, I thought.
Yeah. I like that they have swing music playing over a lot of that stuff to like emphasize how kind of wild it is.
Yeah. I like that. But for the most part, like the descriptions of like the apartments and like how much the carpets cost and what brand they are, I don't care about that stuff. I get it that it's important for like this yarn that he's spinning about these characters. But I don't care about it.
That was really my main complaint when I was talking to Owen about it. I was like, I feel like he's just listing off a bunch of designers.
It was try hard
on every page. And I know he's trying to hammer home that this stuff is like everything in this house is worth more than your car. But you can establish that in the first couple chapters and then leave off and we get the picture.
You know who else
and he just
does
kept
that?
doing it.
There's a lady who writes a vampire series, J.R. Ward, and she writes books about these weird vampires. But she does this branding thing a lot. Like, we always know what brand of vodka they're drinking or, like, what brand their watch is. And I know people like that in real life, and it's so fucking exhausting. I don't care about any of that. I just... I'm done. That was it.
Candace just wore herself out.
I did.
It's really funny to me, too. Like, when you're... excuse me, I just cannot. When you're the kind of poor that Owen and I are, or that you are, that they'll bring up, like, brand names that I've never heard of in my life.
Right, I'm just
like
the fuck
you
is that?
know that somebody is really rich when Gucci is way too common for them. They're not gonna fucking buy a Gucci bag. That is so tacky.
Especially one that has like the symbol on it where you can see what it is. At least I know like that's tacky, just because I've had super rich friends. But I don't know what these. What?
Like I was talking to Owen about it and about how like, well, they're just super rich and everything gets named by brand as I'm reading. And he was like, oh, so is it like Gucci, Gucci, Gucci? And I was like, no, they do not approve of Gucci. That's for commoners. And he was like, oh, it's that kind of rich. And I was like, yeah, this is a whole next level kind of thing that I have no experience or understanding of.
Yeah, when they were talking about Kitty, when they were describing the dinner that she had with what's his face, I don't remember his name. I just remember Kitty, the actress.
Alistair, wasn't that his name?
Is it Alistair? I don't know. I just remember her name being Kitty Pong, and I liked her because she's just trying to get shit done. Mm-hmm. And they described her as wearing like all Gucci and like her Gucci sunglasses and her dress and everything, and I'm just like, wow,
right?
This is
I really loved this scene with her and was it a Malaysian princess that she meets who loves her because she's on the princess's like favorite soap opera. So everybody introduces Kitty to this woman thinking that she's going to make a fool out of herself, that she's going to be like either overly obescent or she's going to say something really vulgar and embarrass herself. And instead, this princess is like, oh my God, are you on such and such? You're so evil. I love your character. And then gives her one of her diamond rings off of her own hand as an engagement present. And it's one of my favorite scenes in the whole book because you get to see his shit family look completely shocked and appalled at the way that a commoner gets to come in and like have a special relationship with literal royalty that they don't have.
Me. Isn't Araminta an actress as well?
She's a model.
Same diff. Why is it that Kitty gets all of this shit and Araminta is like not getting any of that?
Because Araminta, this is my guess, Araminta probably came from money and models as a thing to do. Whereas Kitty probably comes not from money and has money now because of acting, which is a whole other thing.
I didn't care for that, but we'll just throw that on the fire with all the other stuff I know.
But I mean, that feels really true to me, you know?
Yeah, I think it's the same type of deal as that lady at the bachelorette party who, you know, had the boyfriend who, you know, doesn't make enough. And they were like, she's in the crowd, she's in the group. But that one girl did kind of snidely say, we know about your situation.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot about that.
So I think that maybe like once you're in, you know, you can stay there if you do the right things.
Right.
Maybe that's the difference. You know, Araminta came from money, maybe. Nobody seems to have a problem with her marrying Colin, who's, you know, very, very wealthy.
Yeah. Yeah, that's my only guess, is that's like her family is pretty solid, and so she can kind of do what she wants as long as it's not scandalous.
Maybe she's like a Weasley who's got like a famous wizarding name.
Interesting. She's a pureblood, so it's fine.
Yeah, so she's in the club already.
All right, so let's talk about the ending. Like, I've mentioned side characters. We have this whole thing with Astrid and her husband, which felt really drawn out. And
I super hated the confrontation between Astrid and her husband. And I don't know, I haven't read the physical book. So
okay.
I've only heard the audiobook and the way that the narrator reads it. But Michael is so gross to her. He's so dismissive. Like, she calls him out on the affair, and she's having all of this anxiety about it. And she's just gotten in a car wreck because of her anxiety over it.
Right.
And he's just like, you know, he takes a moment, and she's just expecting him to, like, deny it or literally say anything else other than what he does say, which is, well, guess we're getting divorced now. Mm-hmm. And he's like, he doesn't even care that he's been caught. And I hate him so much.
He doesn't care that he's been caught because he hasn't actually been having an affair. So this is going exactly the way that he wants it to go. It's
just like, he's just so dismissive of her and her feelings.
In the movie, they play it like Michael really was having an affair.
Yeah.
And then she leaves him.
There's like a sequel and all this stuff with Astrid's ex. And
there's a sequel, what, movie?
No, there's another book.
No, I'm talking about the movie right now.
Oh, I'm sorry. Listen, you're confusing me.
I specifically said in the movie they play it that Michael really is having an affair. And so like in the book, the whole thing is that Michael fakes that he's having an affair in order to give Astrid a valid reason to leave him, because he knows it's going to be like too hard on her family and her reputation if he were to just bail.
That's what I mean.
But I'm trying to point out the weird difference in that the movie decided, yeah, let's just have him having an affair. What a complete difference to his character it makes to have that.
The relationship was changed in ways that I didn't. In the movie, I didn't get it. Like the way their relationship was portrayed in the film.
Yeah, in the movie, I felt like... So, in the book, you get a pretty good setup of Michael being treated like the help by Astrid's family.
Yeah, they wanted to... they specifically mentioned that he, like, can you reprogram my Xbox?
Mm-hmm. There's a bunch of different things. Like, somebody just hands him a laptop at one point and is like, we can't find the pen. They're asking him to, like, go into the kitchen and deal with, like, a refrigerator that's like, on the...
It's very essentially...
Gross. Yeah, there's just like one scene after another of them really like talking down to him and treating him like he is a servant. And so it sets up in a much more believable way his feeling of frustration and being of the lower class, even though he is Astrid's husband. And not that it excuses the fact that he tried to fake an affair to get out of this relationship, but it makes me sympathize a lot more with his like overall feeling of resentment. That resentment is a really hard thing to deal with and a really difficult thing to get past in a relationship. And so I felt in a lot of ways like, okay, you know what? I kind of get where you're coming from on this. In the movie, they basically just have him resent her money and resent the fact that
there's that whole scene where she's like hiding jewelry and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's just, it's almost, I thought that was a bad way to portray his resentment, because then instead of putting it on like her shitty family, they're putting it on her.
Yeah. The discussion that she winds up having with her ex at the end about what was going on with Michael, he says, I don't think he would even have as big a problem with your money and you shopping the way that you do, except that it embarrasses him that you tiptoe around him. So it's not even the money that's the issue. It's the way that you treat him in relation to your money, that you act like he can't handle knowing that you've gone shopping, and he can't handle knowing how many pairs of shoes you own. So you're hiding stuff, and you're not doing it that well. He knows about it, but he also knows that you kind of don't respect him and treat him like a child and keep all of this from him. And that makes so much more sense to me, because in the movie, Michael is shitty. Yeah. And when she finally leaves him and she's like, listen, you want me to make you feel like a man and I can't turn you into something you're not. I was like, oh shit. But in the book, it's a weird like combination of factors that yes, he has too much pride, but also she's like weirdly doing that thing that we were talking about earlier with Nick, where she's trying to live in two different worlds at the same time. She wants to like live in this little apartment that Mike can actually afford, but she still wants to go out and buy millions of dollars, literally, worth of dresses in Paris once a year. And you got to pick what you want, lady. You can't have both of these worlds and act like you really belong in both of them.
I wanted to like Astrid so much that I would actually say that she is my favorite character in the book. But she's just, some of the choices that Kevin Kwan made when writing this book, I feel like a lot, it's like you just said, you know, a lot of the problems with Astrid's narrative is the same shit that's wrong with Nick's. Mm-hmm. They don't know how to communicate, and it ruins their relationships.
Yeah.
Even though I think that, you know, eventually Astrid will, you know, she'll fix her issues, but I hope, because I really do want to like her. I just got really frustrated with both her and Michael, because he wasn't being honest with her, and she was making it worse. Mm-hmm. And
like, she was with him in the times when everybody was treating him like a servant. She was sitting next to him, and she doesn't see it. He has to tell her that this is like really like demeaning to me. I just don't really understand how she doesn't understand and see that happening right in front of her face.
It's one of the things that I think that plagues both Astrid and Nick. They're so unself-aware.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I don't even think that it's the money. I think it's a choice that they're making. Like,
I definitely think it's a choice. Yeah.
This is being willfully obtuse. It's not even ignorance. It's being an obtuse asshole.
And the fact that she like wanted that, her immediate thing was, all right, we're going to move past this. We're not like, when she still thinks that he's having an affair, so that he has to come out and like, finally she tracks him down after he leaves and has to force it out of him that I was never having an affair. The woman that I'm staying with right now is my cousin. And I knew that it would be bad for your reputation, and that you care more about your reputation than I do. So I was willing to be the bad guy so that we could just end this, because neither of us is happy. And that was the part that I had a problem with, is him saying neither of us is happy, because he's not paying attention to her, apparently, because she has been. She's been very happy, and he just seems to be so wrapped up in his own unhappiness that he's applying it to her as well, and that doesn't seem to be true. And in the end, her going to an ex for advice, and her ex being like, let me help you because I still love you so much that I just want you to be happy even if I can't have you, and artificially inflating Michael's stock to what? reinforce his confidence so that he comes back to you?
This is worse. You've made it worse.
Really bad. Like, if you say that there is a sequel, I can't imagine that this doesn't come up and he finds out that this was like done to him by somebody as a favor.
Oh, there's like
and
3
he feels even more emboldened or even more embarrassed by that because she is again treating him like a child.
There's 3 books, dude.
Okay. Well, that's...
And
not...
I haven't read them, but my friend has. And the X thing becomes a capitalized thing. It just gets really convoluted, and they talk about, like, she was really never in love with Michael. I don't know. It was really just messy. You know, I was like, yeah, I'm never going to read that.
Because it ends with the guy basically calling up his stockbroker, getting them to inflate the stock, and then he tells her, bide your time, and I have a feeling he'll come back to you. And there's just so much gross about that. It's just like...
It's not better. Like, how do these people get through life with having such terrible communication skills?
Yeah.
Like, Astrid has been married to this guy for how long? At least...
I don't know. 5 years, I think?
Like, how old is their kid? Like, 5 or 6?
I think he was like 3, I thought.
Oh, okay.
Maybe he might be older. I'm bad at that.
I'm not good at it either, and I'm just thinking of how he looked in the movie, and I was thinking like 5 or 6. I'm super bad at guessing ages. But, she should know better. Like, how do you... You know, she insists on living in this, like you said, this tiny-ass apartment with him. And she thought that going to her ex would... I forget his name. Would be a good idea, and then do the same thing she's been doing for years, only more? Mm-hmm. Like, girl.
Yeah. Yeah, and so it makes the ending of the movie where she says, you want to feel like a man, but I can't make you something you're not. All the more like a fuck you to the book, because she really is trying to make him feel like a man in the end of that book. She is faking success on his behalf to make him feel better and less threatened by her so that he will come back to her.
And nobody
actually just the opposite.
Ever addresses the real issue here. Nobody has a real conversation. I feel like this book should just be titled Nobody Has a Conversation by Kevin Kwan.
Yeah, I was waiting for more of a like the confrontation that they have is just a revelation that he's not really cheating. But it's never like there's never a real come to Jesus moment about their relationship issues, which I don't know, maybe that's meant to be continued in the next book, and so he just sets it up here.
I think most of the second book, at least I thought that most of the second book was about Rachel, but...
Well, all right, let's go back to Rachel then, and then we will wrap on this. I really briefly want to mention Eddie having a POV, which felt really pointless to me. I don't really understand why he gets a POV. Because it's just essentially him being like borderline abusive to his wife, really overbearing and terrible to his kids, obsessed with image, obsessed with brand, obsessed with fame. And that's about it.
That whole thing with him and his wife and her dress and the photos. And she just like takes it.
She winds up snapping at him finally.
And he's not only shitty to her, but like the maids and everybody
He's
else.
shitty to everybody that comes near him.
And it's just like, God, dude, like...
Yeah.
I hated that.
So, yeah, he was terrible. And I thought that his story was going to go somewhere.
No.
And all that it seemed to really lead to was this sort of half-hearted, like, fuck you from his wife later on. But it's not enough, and she doesn't, like, leave him or anything. And it just seems really, like, I don't know.
In my opinion, this book would have been a lot better if the POVs would have only been Rachel, Nick, Astrid, and Eleanor. That's it. Mm-hmm. Every other POV, in my opinion, is useless and superfluous.
What other POV is there besides Eddie? In addition to Astrid, Eleanor.
Am I wrong? Am I thinking there's more?
I thought it was just them.
Let me...
So basically, you're just like, just get rid of Eddie.
Yeah, that guy's such a...
Yeah, he's the worst.
All right, I could be wrong. That might be shocking to some of you, but I might be wrong.
So, all right. So the ending of this book wraps. Rachel has this big confrontation with Nick's mother, who basically accuses Rachel of lying about her history because she found out that Rachel's father is alive and in prison, and believes that Rachel has purposely kept that hidden. And Rachel, of course, did not know this information at all. And after fainting, she gets Nick to drop her off at a hotel and immediately bails to her friend's house and gets herself like secluded in her friend's house for weeks as she just sort of like falls into a depression because basically Nick's family is garbage and just did this horrible thing. Nick seems completely unaware that they would stoop to something like this. Of course, they're going to investigate this girl that you didn't tell them about. And also, the fact that they dropped this in her lap, assuming that she was lying, and that she's like such a determined gold digger that she tried to hide this piece of her history, and that her mother has just been like fabricating her childhood, so she thinks. All of this combined has just made her be like, Nick, I don't want any part of this. I don't want any part of this world that you live in that leads to these kinds of investigations happening. Like the fact that they would like pay somebody to dig up dirt on me. Like, I don't want to be in this world. And he keeps on trying to come and see her, and she keeps turning him away. And finally, he has a conversation with Colin. And Colin essentially just tells him to keep trying and don't give up because I know that you really care about her and she's a real one. And he goes and gets her mom and brings her mom to Singapore. So her mother tells this story. It turns out that the guy in prison is not Rachel's father. Her father was a man that her mother had an affair with. Because her actual husband, who she married way too young, was super duper abusive. And she fell for some other guy, got pregnant. And because of the laws at the time, they were only allowed to have one child unless that child was disabled in some way. And because she was born a girl, that was not worth anything to that family. So they decided that they were going to disfigure her by pouring acid in one of her eyes so that she appeared to be like that. It appeared to be a birth defect because she was still young enough. And then they could have a second child. And hopefully it would be a boy this time. They just assume, I guess, that it's a boy next. So, of course, Rachel's mother is like, you're definitely not pouring acid in my baby's eye, goodbye, and bails to the United States under a different name with her child, with the help of the man who fathered the child, but does not know that he fathered the child.
This sounds like that one episode of House.
That one episode? Is that what you said?
Yeah, there's an episode of House that is very similar to this, and this whole time I was just like, God, what did they do? Did you watch this episode?
I have never seen House. No, that's not true. I saw one episode one time, but it gave me nightmares and I never watched it again.
I love that show.
So yeah, Rachel, like initially there's this whole thing that always makes me crazy. And I hated that this went on for so long, of her mother desperately trying to explain what's going on. And Rachel repeatedly, I don't care what you have to say. Why should I believe anything you've said? You've lied to me this whole time. I don't want to hear it. You just go back home. Don't try and talk to me. I don't want to know anything. And it just goes on for pages. And it's just like, oh my God, just shut the fuck up and listen to the fucking woman. You have trusted her your whole life, and there has to be a reason for that because she's proved herself in many ways to be a trustworthy person. So how about you shut the fuck up for a second, Rachel, and sit down and open your damn ears, because nobody in this book wants to talk to each other. And so since she's finally going to talk to somebody, I would love it if we let this happen for a change.
No, they have to be dramatic bitches all the time.
She finally sits down and then, of course, immediately is like, I'm so sorry. I didn't know you went through all of that. Yada, yada, yada. And then, and this was the part that confused me, Nick brought her mother to the house and said, I brought China to you. What? When she's saying I have to go to China to visit her father because she wants to go see the man in prison whom she assumes is her father. And she's about to leave and Nick stops her and he's like, I brought China to you. And he opens the door. She thinks it's going to be like her dad in a jumpsuit or something. And it turns out to be her mom. Later on, after all of these revelations, she's sitting and they're watching Nick walk around by the pool. And her mother says, Nick came to get me 2 days ago. And Rachel's like, what? And her mother's like, yeah, he came to get me because he knew that you needed to talk to me about what was going on and that you were going through something really terrible and that you needed me. So he flew and got me and brought me here. Yeah. And Rachel immediately gets up and like goes to Nick and is like, thank you. How does he says, I brought China to you. Here's your mom. Why is her mother telling her?
Because none of these people know how to have any kind of fucking conversation.
But it didn't take a conversation. He already said it.
Listen, I don't know what you expect from this author by the end of the book.
I don't understand that like moment where it's like, that is what turns her around on Nick. She's like, oh, I can't believe that he did that for me. But you knew he said, I brought China to you. What did you think, that your mother got on a plane of her own accord and spent that money to come and see you like all the way out here? How would she know where you were staying? How would she like, of course he brought her.
There are so many things in this book that bothered me that by the time I got to the end of it, I was like, yeah, I don't have any more feelings left. Like I've spent all of my anger tokens on other things that I just let it go.
So she winds up like, they wind up kissing and that's the end of the book. And I'm just like, okay, but all the problems that you had about his family are still there.
Yeah. There's still literally explosions surrounding the entire landscape of this book. But this is the ending you went with. Okay. It's like so bad.
In the movie, they make it so that Nick's mother suddenly has a change of heart and approves of her because of this sacrifice that she's willing to make so that she's not the one that separates Nick from his family.
Well, in the movie, in my opinion, it was framed as the mother rebelling against the grandmother because she's got a beef with that old lady.
Right.
Because that old lady was a bitch to her.
Mm-hmm.
Which, you know, these things are generational, I guess. So she decided that she wants to stop this stuff. So she does that, but she doesn't do it in person. She just gives Nick this ring and they have a really shitty scene on an airplane that infuriated me to watch. And if I had been there in person, I would have ruined their moment because holy shit.
Somebody needed to shove them into one of the bathrooms to handle that shit privately.
I was so angry. I was texting my friend about it, and she was like, you're such a Grinch. I'm like, they're blocking both aisles!
Honestly, like, I know that the writers thought this was really charming.
No.
But considering that this movie is all about rich, entitled people who don't want poor people in their spaces, for them to bust up into a poor people space and nothing summarizes a poor people space like the economy class on an airplane.
I mean, the end of the book elicited no feelings from me whatsoever, but the end of the movie infuriated me. I just... Get your own jet and have your moment on it. You can fucking afford it. Get the hell out of economy class with your ring that costs more than this whole plane and literally fuck off. Or maybe give me the ring. I'll sell it. I'll buy a plane. I really enjoyed the book the first time I read it, but when I read it again, I keep saying read, but I did the audiobook. It's the same thing.
It's still reading.
But I was just so irritated with so many parts of this that by the time I got to the end of it, I just checked out because I was so frustrated by all of it. I mean, not only did it not make sense, but it doesn't make sense. And as an addition, it doesn't make sense. But okay, here we are.
I just and the way that I'm talking about all of this right now makes it sound like I really didn't enjoy it while I was listening to it, and that's not true.
Yeah.
But I kept having moments of just like, but wait, why didn't they talk about this? Wait, they're acting like this, but we just heard this other, like, there are just a million moments of miscommunication, no communication, backward communication. And I have very low tolerance for that kind of writing where plot points seem to only happen because people aren't listening to each other or because they're like misinterpreting things and not actually talking. Like, that's for me, bottom of the barrel plot device. Did
you mean the entirety of Pretty Little Liars?
Oh God, yeah. Oh,
because
that fucking
that's
show.
What that is. I want to say though that one part of this book that actually made me snort out loud was when Colin and Nick and that other guy are leaving the bachelor party boat,
right?
The yacht or whatever, and they're trying to like stage a medevac. And
yes.
Bernard is in a hot tub at this point. I'm not sure why a helipad is anywhere near a hot tub, but sure.
Okay.
Because the water would just... Anyway, I'm just gonna...
I don't think it's near.
Well,
I think he sees it and gets out and comes running.
How far is he gonna run, though? Anyway, the point is, before that, he's in the hot tub with no pants on, getting a blowjob, and the author briefly says that it's a Puerto Rican girl, which... Okay. But she's like under the water and she's like trying to swallow his testicles or something. And I'm just like, could you maybe have picked different words for this? I'm very concerned for the safety of this poor girl who's trying to...
Yeah, I enjoyed that, especially coming from the audiobook, because she says that line with this really like proper sort of, as he was sitting, and there was a woman, or there was a beautiful girl attempting to swallow his testicles. And she says it in such a
banal way.
Upbeat, lovely, happy voice. And I just could not, I snorted because I did not hear that coming, as one would say.
Yeah, I was, ew, why did you do that? You're fired. But yeah, I thought that was just so stupid to me that I just literally snorted and I was like, okay. Kind of like that scene where, is it Eddie? Who's trying to like pull on some like wedding wear, his like tuxedo. And he's gotten too fat for it and he blames the Italians and their terrible measurements. And his shirt or his pants or whatever just like bust open at the ass. I could hear the author, like the narrator's disdain for Eddie in the tone of her voice. And they split open at the ass. And she's just saying that because she means it.
Why are you saying she when it's a man who wrote this?
Because she's narrating it.
Oh, so you said you can hear the narrator's disdain.
Yeah, I'm
okay,
sorry.
You said I can hear the author's disdain.
Words. I'm sorry, I messed up my words. But yeah, you can hear how she's reading the scene as Eddie just being the worst all the time.
Honestly, as much as I say that we don't need Eddie's POV, and I maintain that we do not, it was nice for at least one person to have what felt like a bit of a comeuppance at all.
He deserved it. He deserved for that tux to not fit.
Oh,
I
yeah,
feel
100%.
sorry for whoever has to fix it because
I felt so bad for his kids.
I felt bad for his kids who were humiliated on behalf of his wife. Even though I do think I liked her very much.
His wife?
Yeah. And how
I
she
actually
was
did
just
too.
like, you've put on some weight.
Mm-hmm.
You know, she just kind of like dealt with all of this bullshit from him, even though I feel like she probably should have told him to fuck off.
She finally does.
In that one scene, though, he deserved it then.
That's true.
That was really bad. But yeah, there were some parts of the audiobook that I think I enjoyed thoroughly.
What is the name of her friend? Paquin?
Paquin, yeah.
Paquin. I really enjoyed her.
Maybe it's Paquin.
The way that they decided to Paquin.
I'm going to Google it, but go on.
But the way that they handled her character in the movie was really funny to me because I did not get how incredibly over the top
I did.
Her family was. Like, I got how over the top their home was, but I did not zero in on her mother and father and apparently weirdo brother. And Awkwafina plays her in the movie, and I just enjoyed her portrayal so deeply and wanted her very much to be like the main character, to be honest.
It's Picklin. L-I-N.
Picklin.
Yeah. P-E-I-K-L-I-N. I thought she was perfect for that role because I feel like Picklin and her entire family were supposed to be the personification of what somebody like the author who comes from old money would think of as new money.
Right. Totally.
And that is my family. They are loud. They are tacky. There it is. Watch the movie.
When she walks in and the mom is like, it was inspired by the Hall of Mirrors at Versailles. And Paquin looks at her and is like, and Trump's bathroom.
Yeah.
And she's like, really? Yeah, really. I enjoyed that a great deal.
I liked them because I thought they were good people. Mm-hmm. You know? Which was...
And I'm always here for Senor Chang. Like, the fact that he was in this was such a delightful surprise that I did not see coming at all.
He was very good. I also enjoyed the, even though he is clearly a token, I enjoyed the gay cousin, whoever he was.
Oh, the one that plays Oliver?
Yeah.
Yeah. He was a good one.
Very entertaining.
The dress montage where she's like coming out in all these different outfits and they're making these quips about what she looks like.
That was the best. That was great.
She's wearing this like brightly colored, and he's like, I can't decide if that's bold or if you look like a clown's tampon. And Picklin says, on a heavy day.
That was so fun. They were really fun characters, and I think in a really stressful story, even in the book, I think that Picklin was really great.
Yeah, same. And Oliver is really good both for comedic levity and to info dump on other characters because he's such a huge gossip.
Yeah,
so
that
sometimes
really
you just need that.
There are times in this book where I felt like the exposition really left me wanting. Mm-hmm. But other times I felt like it was really well done. And I felt like most of the best exposition in the book was from Eleanor's point of view.
Why is that?
Because I think that I believed it coming from her. She, unlike Nick and, Rachel, she knows what she is. And she's more honest with herself about things. And she knows that, there's tension with her mother-in-law, but she fits very well into her... Like, she's older. Like, she fits well into what she's supposed to be.
It's interesting you say that because I would have not said that at all. I felt like his mother was pretty dishonest about a lot of stuff because she's still not at home in this world and is a wannabe and is, like, trying to act like she belongs because she has this sort of territory that is hers now. But
I mean, honestly, with herself. Instead of other people.
Okay, so then why with the exposition would you believe her?
I just enjoyed her point of view. It was her point of view, was much more honest to me than Rachel, mostly because I was just frustrated with Rachel.
Okay.
I just liked Eleanor because I don't know, I just really enjoyed her.
I felt like everything Eleanor saw, I had to take with a grain of salt from the way that she described it to boil it down to what it actually was, because it seemed like everything that she saw, she was like attributing some ulterior motive or other, like, because she's so paranoid.
Why wouldn't she, though?
I'm not saying she wouldn't. As a character, that's accurate, but I don't think it is in itself accurate. I think that she's an unreliable narrator.
That's why I like her, though.
So, but you're saying, like, I feel like her POV is more honest and I trusted her exposition more. And I'm the exact opposite, where everything is colored by her biases about things. So I trusted hers the least.
Yeah, but her bias is also honest. Her bias is
That's not a thing.
Okay, listen, I don't know why I can't explain this well. But her bias is expected, I guess. And I expected that from her. And it was easier to pick apart. I just really liked Eleanor a lot in the book. And I feel like they toned her down in the movie in a way I didn't like.
Okay.
I just liked her.
I definitely think she was toned down in the movie. I would agree with that.
I want to say, though, that I really enjoyed her casting. She was cast very well. And I don't blame her at all for the way that Eleanor was in the movie. I thought she was great. But she was just less.
Yeah. Yeah, I found Eleanor pretty infuriating. I mean, there's the moment, too, where Rachel's, like, introducing herself, and she's wearing red because her mother told her to, and she brought mandarin oranges because her mother told her to. And Eleanor is like, does she think it's Chinese New Year? What the hell is going on here? And that one for me was really funny because she kept on being like, oh, of course you would think that. I bet you're, and she says something about how, look at her looking all over the place, sizing up exactly how much everything is worth. Like, she really believes that Rachel is only here for the money and is assigning all of this subterfuge to every move that Rachel makes based on that.
But I liked that because to me that shows her life experience. This shows the things that Eleanor is used to and, you know, the trauma that she's been subjected to.
Don't agree.
All right. Well.
I think it shows that she's being a real judgmental bitch with somebody who's of a lower class than her. Okay, and she just decides that if you are, then you must be after his money, period.
That is exactly what she's being, and I'm saying I liked it. She is being judgy, and she is being a snob, and she is being horrific. But I loved it.
All right. Well. So that's Crazy Rich Asians, everyone.
That's literally
a book with a lot of problems that was still pretty fun. I really do think that the food descriptions are some of the best parts of the book, and I really want to eat some real Chinese food because that's so hard to find. Google Chinese restaurants in my area, guys. There's not a lot of variety out there.
You liked the food. I liked the bitchy mom.
I liked the food. I enjoyed the descriptions of the fashion at times, although there were moments where there were some descriptions of things that I didn't know what those words meant at all. And I was like, wow, I need a little bit more coaching.
I did love the descriptions of the dresses, but I could have done without the seasons and the designers.
Yeah, the designers' names were really what, like, kind of always tripped me up. Was like, I felt like I was so distracted by, I don't know who that is.
Right.
To not really. But yeah, so, Lian Duan is here. Hi! Houston's Chinatown isn't bad, but far from you, yeah. Houston's like 3 hours, I think.
I have to say that every single time Anton posts pictures of restaurants that he eats at with his friends, because I know Anton isn't eating that fake shit. I'm so jealous. I am overcome with a sense of hangry jealousy.
Houston's restaurant scene, like Dallas isn't terrible, but
it's not.
Houston is just so much better.
I think that the difference between Dallas and Houston is that Houston is more culture. I'm fucking at my words. Let's move on. I'm sorry.
I think Candace just had a stroke on air, everybody.
Submersive. I don't know. Dallas is known for more restaurants.
I'm sorry, God. Dallas is known for more restaurants.
I hate you and this conversation. Anyway, I love Anton's food posts. Let's pretend the rest of that didn't happen.
Oh, God. Yeah. All right. So, I'm sorry, guys. I'm really distracted now. That was just so...
That is my worst moment on your show ever.
I'm sorry, my cough. Oh, God. I'm able to keep it mostly under control, but then when it pops up, it's like that deep chest cough, and I'm just like, oh, this is so gross.
Sorry.
The next book that I will be covering on the 30th, a Saturday in the afternoon, is Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. I'll be covering that with Jamie. I'm super excited because I love that book desperately. Jamie has been having a hard time getting through it.
It's because it's not good, but go on.
You are a horrible harpy, and I hate you, and I will never have you on my show again.
That's on brand, so go on.
I love that book, and it makes my heart happy every time I reread it.
Your heart is full of weird food.
Yeah? Continue that thought, please. Your heart is full of weird food. Wow. She really told me.
I was trying to make a joke about the weird stuff in this book that you liked that I didn't like, and I just... Listen, I ran out of gas like 30 minutes ago.
And the April book for next month is The Time Traveler's Wife, which I don't know anything about. And I have heard the name of that book thrown around so many times. Probably it seems to have spawned a whole series of books that are all called The Blank Blank's Wife, which I find very frustrating. But Candace is making a face. But yeah, so I have no idea how I'm going to feel about that one. But I'm going to cover that one with Jamie too. It's weird that I'm having like moments of the same host a couple times in a row, which doesn't tend to happen on this show too much. But that's just the way it's working out this time. So, yeah, everybody keep your ear to the ground for the Little Women and Time Traveler's Wife episodes and crowdcasts that are going to be coming up.
And I will be back in August for Imagica.
Oh, right.
That is... I'm so excited.
What if I came on and I was just like, it was trash, and you're stupid for liking it?
I will end the call... And I will block you on Facebook because me and Rashawn have tried for literally years to get this on your docket. And if you ruin our moment, I don't really have a threat there. But
guys, she's just gone incoherent at the mere thought of this.
We're just gonna wait because I'm rereading it and I'm taking notes. I want to be ready.
All right, everybody. Well, stay tuned for my reactions to Imagica as well. And we will see you next month for the new episode. Toodaloo, motherfuckers!
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.